The lawyer looked at Emma across the mahogany desk and said 5 words that changed everything. Your sister committed financial fraud. $400,000. That's what Madison got as a wedding gift, while Emma received a dusty box of what everyone called junk. But that box held the key to destroying everything her family had built on lies. Emma Clark never imagined her grandmother's funeral would be the day her entire world shattered. At 32 years old, she had spent the last decade working double shifts as an emergency room nurse in Chicago, struggling to pay off student loans, and living in a cramped studio apartment where the heating barely worked during brutal Midwest winters. Her younger sister, Madison, 28, lived in a sprawling suburban mansion with her husband, drove a Range Rover, and posted pictures from European vacations every few months. Emma always wondered how a real estate agent and a marketing consultant could afford such luxury. The answer came on a gray November morning. Standing in a funeral home that smelled of lilies and broken promises. If you've ever felt invisible in your own family, if you've ever wondered why some people get everything while you get nothing, subscribe to this channel right now, because what happens next will show you that sometimes the universe has a way of balancing the scales in the most unexpected ways. Hit that subscribe button, because you need to hear how this story ends. Emma stood in the back of the funeral home chapel, watching relatives she barely recognized offer condolences that felt hollow and rehearsed. Her grandmother, Catherine Walsh, had been a formidable woman, sharp-minded until the very end at 87 years old. She had built a successful accounting firm in the 70s when women in business were still fighting for basic respect. Emma had always felt a special connection to her, spending childhood summers learning about finances and integrity, while Madison complained about being bored. Yet here she was, being treated like an afterthought at the funeral, while Madison played the grieving granddaughter in a $5,000 black Chanel suit. The funeral service was elegant, expensive, everything Catherine would have wanted. Emma's father, Robert Clark, gave a moving eulogy about his mother's strength and wisdom. Emma's mother, Patricia, dabbed her eyes with a designer handkerchief. Madison sobbed loudly in the front row, her husband Brandon rubbing her back consolingly. Emma felt like she was watching a performance, a carefully choreographed show where she hadn't been given a script. After the service, during the reception at her parents' Tudor-style home in Oak Park, Emma overheard a conversation that made her blood run cold. She had stepped into the kitchen to escape the suffocating small talk when she heard Madison's voice floating from the adjacent sunroom. I'm grateful for everything Grandma Catherine did for us, Madison was saying to their cousin Jennifer. That $400,000 she gave us for the wedding basically set up our entire life, the house, Brandon's business investment, everything. I don't know what we would have done without her generosity. Emma froze, her hand gripping the granite countertop so hard her knuckles turned white. $400,000. Madison had received $400,000 from their grandmother. Emma's mind raced back to 5 years ago, to Madison's wedding. That extravagant affair at a lakefront venue with 300 guests, an 8-tier cake, and a live orchestra. Emma had been a bridesmaid, wearing a dress she couldn't afford, smiling through gritted teeth as Madison complained about flower arrangements and seating charts. Their grandmother had attended, looking regal and proud, but Emma never knew about any gift, any money, any help at all. Jennifer's response cut through Emma's thoughts. Wow, that's incredible. What did Emma get? There was a pause, then Madison laughed. It was a light, dismissive sound that felt like a slap. Emma, I think Grandma gave her some old books or something at her college graduation. You know how she is. Always struggling, always playing the martyr. She probably wouldn't have known what to do with real money anyway. The words hit Emma like a physical blow. Always struggling, always playing the martyr. She felt heat rising in her face. A mixture of humiliation and rage that made her vision blur. She had struggled, yes, but not by choice. She had put herself through nursing school, working night shifts at a diner, surviving on ramen and determination. She had asked her parents for help once, just once, when her student loan payments became crushing. Her father had told her that financial responsibility meant learning to handle your own problems. Meanwhile, Madison got $400,000 in secret. Emma didn't confront anyone at the reception. She smiled mechanically, accepted condolences, and left as soon as it was socially acceptable. But that night, lying in her small apartment listening to her neighbor's television through paper-thin walls, she couldn't stop thinking about the injustice. $400,000 could have changed her life. It could have paid off her loans, given her a down payment on a real home, provided the security she had been desperately chasing for years. Why had her grandmother, a woman who preached fairness and integrity, given everything to Madison and nothing to her? The answer came 3 days later when the family gathered for the reading of Catherine Walsh's will. Emma almost didn't attend. What was the point? Her grandmother had already made her feelings clear through her actions. But something Some small voice of curiosity, or perhaps masochism, made her show up to the lawyer's office in downtown Chicago. The office was all dark wood and leather chairs, the kind of place that radiated old money and established power. Her family was already there, Madison looking bored, her parents sitting stiffly, their Uncle Thomas fidgeting with his phone. The lawyer, a thin man in his 60s named Gregory Hartwell, began reading the will with professional detachment. Most of Catherine's estate went to her children, Emma's father and uncle, to be divided equally. There were specific bequests for various grandchildren, donations to charities, the expected distribution of a well-organized life. Then Hartwell paused, adjusted his glasses, and looked directly at Emma. "To my granddaughter Emma Catherine Clark," he read, "I leave the contents of the storage unit at Lincoln Park Storage, Unit 217, and all items contained within. I trust she will understand their value." The room fell silent for a moment, then Madison snorted. A storage unit? Grandma left Emma a storage unit full of junk? She didn't even try to hide her amusement. Emma's mother, Patricia, sighed. Catherine was getting old. Emma, she probably forgot what was in there. Maybe there are some family heirlooms, photo albums, that sort of thing. Her tone was patronizing, pitying, as if Emma was a child who needed to be consoled for receiving a participation trophy. Emma's father nodded in agreement. "We can help you sort through it this weekend if you want. Probably just old furniture and paperwork. Your grandmother kept everything." Emma felt her face burning again, that same humiliation from the reception washing over her. Even in death, even through her will, she was being treated as less than. Madison got a house and a luxury lifestyle. Emma got a storage unit of forgotten junk, but she kept her voice steady when she spoke. "That's fine. I'll handle it myself." The lawyer seemed to sense the tension in the room. He cleared his throat and continued reading, but Emma barely heard the rest. Her mind was already at that storage unit, wondering what her grandmother could possibly have left her that the family dismissed so easily. What she found there would tear her family apart at the seams. Have you ever discovered a secret that changed everything you thought you knew? Drop justice in the comments if you think Emma deserves answers. And if you're not subscribed yet, do it now. Because what Emma finds in that storage unit will absolutely blow your mind. Emma drove to Lincoln Park Storage on a cold Saturday morning, the kind of Chicago day where the wind cut through your coat and made your eyes water. The facility was a sprawling complex of orange metal buildings, impersonal and industrial. She found Unit 217 on the second floor, the padlock key feeling heavy in her palm. Her hands trembled slightly as she unlocked it, not from cold, but from anticipation mixed with dread. What if her family was right? What if this was just junk, a final confirmation that she had never really mattered? The metal door rolled up with a screech, revealing a 10 by 10 space packed with boxes, filing cabinets, and plastic storage containers. Emma stepped inside, pulling the door down behind her for privacy, and turned on the overhead light. The unit smelled of dust and old paper, and for a moment her heart sank. It did look like junk, random accumulation of a long life, but then she noticed how organized everything was. The boxes were labeled in her grandmother's precise handwriting: financial records, 1975, 1980, personal correspondence, business documents, family history. Catherine Walsh had been an accountant, meticulous and deliberate. She wouldn't have left chaos. Emma started with a box labeled, "For Emma, read first." Inside, she found a letter sealed in an envelope with her name written across the front in her grandmother's distinctive script. Her hands shook as she opened it. "My dearest Emma," the letter began, "if you're reading this, I'm gone, and I suspect your family has already dismissed what I've left you as worthless. They would. They've always underestimated you, just as they underestimated me in my younger years. But you, my brilliant girl, you're different. You have my mind for details, my commitment to truth, and my inability to tolerate injustice. What I'm leaving you isn't junk. It's the truth about our family, and it's worth far more than the money I gave your sister." Emma's heart began to pound. She read on, her grandmother's words painting a picture she had never imagined. Catherine had discovered years ago that Emma's parents and sister had been involved in financial schemes that violated every principle she held dear. The $400,000 Madison received hadn't been a gift. It had been stolen from accounts Catherine controlled, forged documents making it look legitimate. Robert and Patricia had orchestrated it, believing their elderly mother wouldn't notice or wouldn't live long enough to care. They had underestimated Catherine Walsh. "In this unit," the letter continued, "you'll find documentation of everything. Bank statements, forged signatures, email correspondences, recorded phone calls. I spent 3 years gathering evidence. I didn't go to the authorities because they're my family, Emma, but I won't let them get away with it either. I'm leaving this choice to you. You can expose them, or you can let it go. But you deserve to know the truth about why you struggled while Madison thrived. It wasn't fate or favoritism, it was theft. Emma sat on the cold concrete floor of the storage unit and cried, not from sadness, but from an overwhelming mixture of vindication and grief. Her grandmother had known. She had seen everything, documented everything, and chosen Emma as the one person who could be trusted with the truth. Over the next week, Emma went through every box systematically. What she found was devastating and comprehensive. Her grandmother had been a forensic accountant before retirement, and she had applied those skills to her own family with surgical precision. There were bank statements showing transfers from Catherine's accounts to a shell company registered in Madison's name, email exchanges between Robert and Patricia discussing how to handle Mother's finances and secure Madison's future. Text messages between Madison and Brandon joking about the windfall from Grandma's dementia, except Catherine hadn't had dementia at all. There were also recordings. Catherine had apparently recorded several phone conversations where her son and daughter-in-law discussed their plans, believing she was asleep or unaware. In one particularly damning recording, Emma heard her mother say, "Emma's too proud to ask for help and too naive to suspect anything. By the time she realizes how far ahead Madison is, it'll be too late to do anything about it." Listening to those words, spoken in her mother's voice with such casual cruelty, Emma felt something break inside her. These weren't the parents she thought she knew. These weren't people who loved her. They were strangers who had systematically ensured her failure while celebrating her sister's fraudulent success, but the evidence went deeper. Catherine had also discovered that the $400,000 hadn't come from her personal accounts alone. Robert and Patricia had used their power of attorney, granted during a brief period when Catherine had surgery, to access trust funds meant for all the grandchildren equally. Madison's wedding gift had actually been money that should have been split between Emma, Madison, and their 3 cousins. They had stolen from everyone, manipulating accounts and destroying records. The total amount misappropriated was closer to $800,000, with Madison receiving half and Robert and Patricia pocketing the rest through various schemes. Emma's grandmother had valued the entire fraud at approximately $1.2 million when including interest and investment gains that should have been distributed properly. Emma sat surrounded by evidence of betrayal, and she made a decision. She wasn't going to let this go. She wasn't going to be the bigger person, wasn't going to protect people who had actively worked to keep her struggling. Her grandmother had left her this information for a reason, and Emma was going to honor that trust. She was going to burn their perfect little world to the ground. On Monday morning, Emma called a law firm specializing in estate fraud and elder financial abuse. She brought 3 boxes of documentation to her first meeting with attorney Michael Reeves, a shark-like man in his 40s with a reputation for destroying fraudulent estate cases. He spent 2 hours reviewing documents while Emma sat in silence, watching his expression shift from professional interest to predatory excitement. When he finally looked up, Michael Reeves smiled like he'd just been handed a winning lottery ticket. "Miss Clark," he said slowly, "your family committed multiple felonies: fraud, forgery, theft, elder financial abuse, and possibly tax evasion depending on how they reported this income. The documentation your grandmother compiled would make a federal prosecutor weep with joy. This is career-making evidence. The question is, what do you want to do with it?" Emma didn't hesitate. "I want them to lose everything they stole. I want Madison to understand what it feels like to have nothing. I want my parents to face consequences. And I want what was rightfully mine all along." Michael's smile widened. "Then let's go to war." The legal process began immediately. Michael filed a civil suit against Robert, Patricia, Madison, and Brandon Clark, alleging conspiracy to commit fraud, theft, and elder abuse. The suit demanded full restitution of all misappropriated funds, plus damages, interest, and legal fees. Simultaneously, he provided the criminal evidence to the Illinois State Attorney's Office, triggering a separate criminal investigation. The lawsuit was filed on a Tuesday. By Wednesday evening, Emma's phone was exploding with calls and texts from her family. She ignored them all, blocking each number systematically. On Thursday, her father showed up at her apartment building, pounding on her door and shouting about betrayal and family loyalty. Emma called the police, and he was escorted away, his face red with rage and something that might have been fear. On Friday, Madison came to Emma's hospital. Waiting in the parking lot after Emma's shift ended, Emma saw her sister leaning against that Range Rover, arms crossed, and felt nothing but cold satisfaction. "Emma, please," Madison started when Emma approached. "You don't understand what you're doing. This lawsuit will destroy our family." Emma stopped, keys in hand, and looked at the sister she once admired. Madison looked different now, smaller somehow, her designer clothes and perfect makeup, unable to hide the panic in her eyes. Destroy our family? Emma repeated quietly. Madison, you destroyed this family years ago when you decided my struggle was worth less than your luxury. You stood there at Grandma's funeral in your $5,000 suit, bought with stolen money, and laughed about me playing the martyr. Did you think I wouldn't find out? Did you think Grandma was too old to notice what you were doing? Madison's face crumpled. It wasn't my idea. Mom and Dad, they said Grandma wanted me to have it, that she approved. I didn't know it was wrong until later, and by then the money was already spent. We bought the house. Brandon invested in his company. We can't just give it back. Emma felt a surge of dark amusement. You spent stolen money and now you can't return it? That's not a defense, Madison. That's called consequences. You've been living a life you didn't earn, didn't deserve, while I worked myself to exhaustion. You posted vacation pictures while I chose between groceries and medication, and you never once felt guilty enough to tell the truth. Tears were streaming down Madison's face now, mascara leaving dark tracks. I'm your sister, Emma. Don't do this. We can work something out. We can pay you back somehow. Please don't take everything from us. We have a life, a home, Brandon's business. If you do this, we'll lose it all. Emma stepped closer, her voice dropping to barely above a whisper. Good. Lose it all, because that's exactly what you let happen to me while you lived in stolen luxury. Consider this your education in reality, Madison. It's going to be brutal, but I promise you'll learn so much. She walked away, leaving her sister sobbing in the parking lot, and didn't look back. Emma felt no guilt, only a sense of righteous purpose. For the first time in years, she wasn't the one struggling alone in the dark. Now her family would understand exactly how that felt. The case is heating up, and you won't believe what happens when they all end up in court. This is the moment everything explodes. Stay tuned because the best part is coming next. Make sure you're subscribed because you absolutely cannot miss how this ends. The legal battle consumed the next 6 months of Emma's life, but unlike her years of struggle, this fight felt purposeful. Michael Reeves was a brilliant attorney, ruthless and thorough. He deposed every family member, forcing them to testify under oath about their actions. Emma watched via video conference as her father squirmed under questioning, as her mother's carefully constructed facade of respectability crumbled, as Madison broke down describing how she knew the money wasn't legitimately given. The depositions were brutal and satisfying. The criminal investigation proceeded in parallel. The state attorney's office assigned a prosecutor named Diana Morales, a fierce woman who specialized in financial crimes against the elderly. She saw Catherine Walsh's case as particularly egregious because the victims were family members who had exploited trust and love for personal gain. Grand jury indictments came down in month 3. Robert and Patricia Clark were charged with multiple felonies including theft by deception, forgery, and conspiracy. Madison and Brandon faced charges of receiving stolen property and conspiracy, though their charges were less severe since prosecutors believed they were manipulated by Robert and Patricia. The media picked up the story. Prominent Oak Park family accused of defrauding elderly mother ran as a headline in the Chicago Tribune. Local news stations covered the courthouse appearances, cameras capturing Robert Clark's defeated walk, Patricia's trembling hands, Madison's swollen eyes. The perfect family image they had cultivated for decades was destroyed in a matter of weeks, replaced by public shame and criminal accusation. Emma's extended family fractured. Her cousins, realizing they had also been robbed of their inheritance, joined the civil suit as additional plaintiffs. Uncle Thomas cut off all contact with Robert, furious that his own mother had been victimized by his brother. Friends abandoned the Clarks, unwilling to be associated with such scandal. The social standing they had valued so highly evaporated overnight. Throughout it all, Emma's family attempted reconciliation. They sent letters, intermediaries, even hired a family therapist to facilitate a meeting. Emma refused everything. She had listened to her grandmother's recorded conversations dozens of times, hearing her mother's cruel dismissal of her struggles, her father's calculated theft, Madison's gleeful participation. There was nothing to reconcile. These people had shown her exactly who they were, and Emma believed them. The civil trial began in month 8. Michael presented Catherine Walsh's evidence with devastating precision. He walked the jury through bank statements, showed video depositions of banking officials confirming forged signatures, played portions of Catherine's recordings. The defense attorneys, expensive lawyers that Robert and Patricia had mortgaged their house to afford, tried to argue that Catherine had been confused, that she had consented to the financial arrangements, that this was a misunderstanding between family members. Michael destroyed those arguments systematically. He presented medical records showing Catherine had been cognitively sharp until her final week. He showed email timestamps proving the Clarks had acted quickly and secretively. He introduced Catherine's own testimony, a video she had recorded with her attorney years before her death, explaining exactly what she had discovered and why she wanted Emma to be the one to expose it. "I choose Emma," Catherine said in the video, her voice strong despite her age, "because she's the only one in this family who inherited my sense of justice. She's suffered because of their greed, and she deserves to be the one who brings truth to light. Emma, if you're watching this, know that you were always my favorite, not because you were perfect, but because you were real. You worked hard, you stayed honest, and you never asked for more than you earned. That's rare and precious. Make them answer for what they've done." The jury watched this video in absolute silence. Several members were visibly moved. Emma, sitting in the gallery, felt tears streaming down her face. But they weren't tears of sadness. They were tears of validation, of finally being seen and valued by someone who mattered. The defense had no response to Catherine's own words. How could they argue confusion when she had planned this for years, gathered evidence methodically, and stated her intentions clearly? The trial lasted 3 weeks. The jury deliberated for less than 6 hours. They found Robert, Patricia, Madison, and Brandon liable for fraud, theft, and conspiracy in the civil case. The judgment was comprehensive and brutal. Full restitution of all misappropriated funds, calculated at $1.2 million with interest and investment gains, punitive damages of an additional $500,000, payment of all legal fees for the plaintiffs, forced sale of assets to satisfy the judgment, including Madison and Brandon's house, their vehicles, and Brandon's business shares. Emma sat in the courtroom as the verdict was read, watching her family's faces transform from hope to despair. Her mother collapsed into her attorney's arms, sobbing uncontrollably. Her father sat motionless, staring straight ahead like a man watching his execution. Madison clutched Brandon's hand so tightly her knuckles were white, her face a mask of devastation. Emma felt no pity. She thought of every double shift she had worked, every meal she had skipped to save money, every night she had cried from exhaustion and hopelessness while they lived in luxury built on theft. This wasn't revenge. This was justice, pure and simple. The criminal trial followed 2 months later. With the civil verdict establishing the facts, the criminal case became a formality. Robert and Patricia took plea deals to avoid lengthy trials. 5 years in federal prison with possibility of parole after 3. Madison and Brandon received probation and community service since prosecutors acknowledged their lesser role. But their lives were effectively destroyed regardless. The forced asset sales were swift and merciless. Madison and Brandon's mansion went on the market at a reduced price for quick sale, purchased by a tech executive who got a bargain. The Range Rover, the designer clothes, the art collection, everything was liquidated. Brandon's marketing firm collapsed without his active involvement and with the stigma of criminal association. Madison, unable to maintain her real estate license with a criminal record, took a job as a grocery store cashier. The irony wasn't lost on Emma. Robert and Patricia's Tudor home in Oak Park, the house Emma had grown up in, sold to a young family. Emma drove by it once, seeing children playing in the yard that used to be hers, and felt nothing. That house had never really been a home, just a beautiful shell hiding rot underneath. The restitution money was distributed according to the court's order. Emma received approximately $400,000 as her share, the amount that should have been hers originally. Her cousins received their portions as well, though the amounts were smaller since the bulk of the theft had targeted Emma's inheritance specifically. After legal fees and taxes, Emma netted $320,000, money that finally gave her the security she had been chasing for over a decade. But the money wasn't the real victory. The real victory was watching her family understand, finally, what their actions had cost. Emma used some of the restitution to pay off her student loans in full, a moment of profound satisfaction as she clicked Submit Payment on that final amount. She bought a modest 2-bedroom condo in a decent Chicago neighborhood, nothing extravagant, just a place that was truly hers. She invested the rest conservatively, creating the financial foundation she had never had. She didn't quit her nursing job. She loved it too much. But she cut back to regular hours, finally able to breathe without the constant pressure of financial desperation. Life became different, better, not perfect, but honest. 6 months after the criminal sentencing, Emma received a letter from her mother, sent from the federal prison in Indiana where Patricia was serving her sentence. Emma almost threw it away unopened, but curiosity won out. The letter was 5 pages of self-justification and plea for forgiveness. Patricia claimed she had been pressured by Robert, that she had never meant to hurt Emma, that family should forgive family. She begged Emma to visit, to write back, to give her a chance to explain in person. Emma read it twice, then filed it away without responding. There was nothing her mother could say that would change what had been done. No explanation that would make the years of struggle and humiliation acceptable. Forgiveness wasn't earned through pretty words in a letter. It was earned through changed behavior and genuine amends. Her mother had shown no remorse until consequences arrived. And even now, her letter focused more on her own suffering than on the harm she had caused. Emma owed her nothing, not even a response. Madison tried to reach out several times through intermediaries. She wanted to apologize, to rebuild their sisterly relationship, to explain that she had been young and stupid and manipulated. Emma heard these messages and felt nothing. The woman who had laughed about her struggles, who had lived in stolen luxury without conscience, who had only felt remorse when facing consequences, that woman wasn't her sister. That woman was a stranger who happened to share DNA. Emma had no interest in pretending otherwise. Her father never tried to contact her. Robert Clark went to prison silent and bitter, never accepting responsibility for his actions. Emma heard through her Uncle Thomas that Robert blamed her for destroying the family, claimed she had been vindictive and cruel. Emma found this almost funny. She hadn't destroyed anything. She had simply revealed what was already rotten. If their family couldn't survive the truth, then it had never been real to begin with. A year after everything concluded, Emma returned to the storage unit where her journey had begun. She had kept the rental active, unable to quite let go of the space that had changed her life. Most of Catherine's documentation had been turned over to attorneys or archived. But Emma had kept some personal items, letters her grandmother had written, family photos from better times, small mementos. She spent an afternoon organizing these items, deciding what to keep and what to finally release. Among the boxes, she found one more envelope marked, "To Emma, after everything." Her grandmother had planned for this moment too. Inside was a short letter. "My dearest Emma, if you're reading this, you made your choice. You chose truth over comfort, justice over family peace. I'm proud of you, though I suspect the cost has been high. Family betrayal cuts deeper than any other wound, because it violates the one relationship we're taught to trust absolutely. But remember this. You didn't betray them. They betrayed you first. You didn't destroy your family. You revealed its true nature. Never regret choosing yourself, your dignity, and your truth. The people who matter, the people who truly love you, will understand. The rest were never really yours to lose. Build a new life, Emma. Find people who deserve your loyalty and love. Create the family you should have had all along. And know that wherever I am, I'm watching you with absolute pride and love. You were always the best of us. Grandma Catherine." Emma sat in that storage unit and cried again. But this time the tears were healing. She had been right. Her grandmother had known she would be tested, known she would face pressure and doubt, and had left this final message to steel her resolve. Emma wasn't a villain. She was a woman who had refused to let injustice stand, who had honored the trust of the one person in her family who truly saw her. She locked the storage unit for the last time that day. She didn't need it anymore. The evidence was preserved in legal archives, the truth was public record, and the lessons were learned. Emma drove home through Chicago traffic, watching the city she loved glow in the late afternoon sun, and felt something she hadn't experienced in years: peace. She had won, not just in court, not just financially, but in the deeper sense that mattered most. She had proven to herself that she was strong enough to stand alone, principled enough to choose right over easy, and valuable enough to fight for. Her family had tried to make her doubt those things, had worked systematically to keep her small and struggling and grateful for scraps, but she had broken free from their narrative and written her own story. This was her victory, and no one could ever take it away. What do you think about Emma's decision? Was she right to expose her family, or should she have let it go for the sake of family peace? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. If you've ever faced betrayal from people you trusted, share your story. And if you want more incredible stories of justice, revenge, and standing up for yourself, hit that subscribe button right now. There are so many more shocking stories coming your way, and you won't want to miss a single one. Thanks for watching, and remember, sometimes the people who hurt you the most are the ones who taught you how strong you really are.